Hey everybody, I'm not sure what Mother Nature has thrown your way this week, but boy, we have had some weather this week. Starting with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we had that extreme heat. So it was over 95 degrees all 3 days in a row, which here in northern Michigan, that's rare just in general, much less to have that in June. So we were definitely adjusting to high temperatures, and we had to pay special attention to our plants, making sure that they got extra water. Some people, I think, maybe didn't get water to their plants in time, so their plants are struggling because of that. But then we followed up with rain, and that was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and into today. It has been almost constant rain for that entire time. Now, we were under a flood watch, but it's just been kind of a slow and steady rain, so I don't think there was any major flooding in our area, but the amount of rain that has fallen is incredible. I know we're well over 4 inches at this point. I think that was yesterday we hit the 4-inch mark, and it rained all night. So we have a lot of water right now. So this is causing a lot of stress on some of our outside containers. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing. There's a lot of different ways to approach this, but what I'm doing right now is, first thing is checking all my drainage holes. Now, if you have containers that don't have drainage holes, you need to run, don't walk, and pour off that extra water. They have basically become a bucket that's holding water right now, and unless you have aquatic plants in there, those plants are going to suffer, especially if they've been sitting in water since Thursday. You need to pour off that water. If you can get drainage holes in it, do it. I mean, even if you have to drill into them, I mean, be careful, be very careful with that. But it's so important that that water gets drained off, because the plant can only live so long underwater, basically. Meanwhile, I'm going to also go through and check all my pots to make sure that the drainage holes are doing their job, because that's the other thing. If your drainage holes get plugged, or let's say you have them on concrete or on clay soil or anything like that, they're probably not able to drain out. So if that's not happening, then you're going to end up with the same kind of issues as if you didn't have drainage holes at all. So I'm going to go through, just make sure they're doing it. Now, on our big containers, I know that the drainage holes are actually about 1 inch off the ground, and there's a rim around the edge. So I know that that's continuously dripping or draining. So I'm not too worried about those, but some of our smaller containers, those drainage holes are flat on the ground or on the surface. So we want to get those raised up. So you could use sticks, or you could use stones or anything like that. But another great thing are just your bottle caps that you get from your water bottles or your soda bottles. These will do the trick. They'll raise them up. They're pretty inconspicuous as well, and so that's going to let them drain off. For us, normally we don't have to worry about that too much during the summertime, because there's enough evaporation and the drainage is pretty good in those situations. But when that surface is wet or saturated that our pots are on, that can really plug those up. So we want to make sure that we're getting that drainage going. The other thing has to do with fertilizer, because all this water coming down and draining through our pots has basically washed out most of the nutrients and the fertilizer that we had in there. Now, I was lucky. I had fertilized on Wednesday. I kind of knew the rain was coming, so I thought, I'm going to just give them a little bit of extra fertilizer today, and hopefully that'll be good. Now, that fertilizer has been washed out. But I'm not too worried, because the plants got a dose of fertilizer last week. If they go for a couple more days without fertilizer, they're going to be fine. But if your plants were already ready for fertilizer before the rain started, then you're probably going to want to get them some fertilizer as soon as possible. And it might sound counterintuitive to give them fertilizer and give them water now while they're waterlogged, but giving them a little bit more water with fertilizer in it right now, not a bad idea. You can just, you don't have to go heavy on it. Just give them some so that they have a little bit. And then we just kind of wait and let those containers drain and let some of that moisture off, and then fertilize them like we would normally once they dry down. So it's kind of a stressful time, because there's a bit of a dance that we're doing between wanting to give them fertilizer and wanting them to, dry out a little bit. So make that choice based on how you think your plants need the fertilizer. If they don't need the fertilizer, let them just dry down naturally, and everything should be good. But if it has been, say, 10 days since they got fertilizer, you might start thinking, oh, I'm going to have to get some in there pretty soon. So that's just my suggestion. If you have any thoughts too, do leave them in the comments, because I know there's a lot of different ways to approach this. So other thing is, before that we had the heat wave, and I know many of you weren't able to get enough water to your plants. And I think there was a lot of struggling plants already on Wednesday before the rain came. If you're in that situation, let's see your containers completely dried out, your plants were wilted and looking very poorly. The best thing you can do in that situation is gradually add water. So if you added water right away, there was probably pouring right out the bottom, very, very quickly. What you need to do is, give it a little bit of water. If you start seeing it draining out the bottom, then stop giving it water. come back even 10 minutes later, give it a little bit more, and just keep coming back to it. Eventually, that soil is going to start absorbing water again and it'll fill up. Now, the damage that was done to your plants, some plants will just revive. So if you had scaevola or impatiens, those may have looked completely dead and then you added water and they just perked back up. But some of your other plants like your petunias, your calibrachoa, maybe some of your verbena, if they ended up with that dry out, they may not recover, or at least those branches might not. So anything that's dead after you've rehydrated and they've had some time to try to absorb some water, it's dead. Just cut it back and let the stuff that's living do its work and let it kind of grow back. That's about all you can do with those. If the plant has died, I'm really sorry for you. And I know it was really tough because we went from kind of normal weather to extreme weather. So a lot of people weren't adjusted. They weren't on that regular schedule. And let's face it, heat, humidity, and wind really impact how much water our containers need. So I would say, cut back any dead parts, give them fertilizer, and usually you'll see an improvement within 2 weeks, maybe sometimes even within a week, depending on how the plants were. So hang in there. As far as our waterlogged plants, they're gonna look rough too. They've been rained on for days. I think you can kind of see on some of mine, they're flat. They don't seem to have their color, their vibrancy that they normally would. But as soon as we start getting sun, they start drying out a little, they're gonna bounce back. So I'm not too worried about these out here, but I do know some of you have containers that are in rough shape. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else I can tell you? I mean, just hang in there. Hopefully everything bounces back. And let's hope we kind of get a little break from the rain and so we can spread it out a little because, later on in the season we might have drought, and to go from flooding to drought is just so frustrating. But anyway, thank you guys all for watching. I hope this helps save your plants. Remember, drainage, drainage, drainage right now when it's this wet.